Hello folks, Panzer J back with a new video, and this video is on HBG's Global War 39. This is the game that we've currently got going on. This is actually the third video in this particular game. I'm going ahead and combining each video and then plan on posting the whole thing at the end, but I'm kind of having second thoughts because this game is taking so long that each video is about a half hour a piece. So if this is another half hour, we'll be up to an hour and a half worth of videos, and we still have more gameplay to go. So you'd probably be looking at a good 2-hour long video. So I might not end up posting all these together into one long video. I might just post them individually. We'll see. But this is the third video on this current game. And again, just a reminder, I'm the Axis Powers, and two of my buddies, the Incredible Falk and Agent 367, have taken on the Allies. So those are the sides that we've got. As far as the actual gameplay, we are up to turn number 14. So we're at the start of turn 14, and each turn Germany goes first. So we're at Germany's turn on round number 14 right now. So, and we've got probably roughly anywhere from 16 to 18 hours of gameplay on this current game. We were at it for another 6 hours yesterday. And we still got a little ways to go. Now, for victory conditions in this game, there's a couple different ways that you can win. But if you go by the rule book, it says at the end of turn 15, the Axis win by controlling 12 of the 20 victory cities, and the Allies win by denying the Axis that victory condition. So if we go, I don't know if that we're necessarily going by the official rules of the game as far as the victory conditions go. I think we might just keep going until one side is completely vanquished or surrenders. But if we go by the actual victory conditions of the game, then we've got 2 turns left, 14 and then 15, and then see where we're at as far as the victory cities go. I am, again, the Axis, so I need 12 victory cities to claim a win. And right now I actually have 12 of the victory cities under my control. I've got still all 3 of the Axis capitals, which those are 3 of the victory cities. So Berlin in Germany, Rome in Italy, and Tokyo in Japan. And then I have 9 other victory cities at this time. I've got Warsaw in Poland. In Russia, I've got Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. So that's 7. And then I also have Calcutta, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Manila for 5 more. So that's a total of 12. So I do have, right now, the current number of victory cities for a win. Now, I would have to hold those for 2 more turns, but honestly, I don't think I'm in danger of really losing any of them. So if we go by the official rules, I think I'll be able to claim victory here in 2 more turns. But again, I'm not sure we're going by that. We might just be going until one side crushes the other. As far as the victory cities, the only one that might be in danger is Rome right here. Agent 367, who is the United States in this game, has got a force in Turin just outside Rome. He's got 6 infantry, 4 tanks, and a couple of planes. But I've got 11 infantry and 3 planes. So I have 1 more unit than he does. Or no, 2 more units than he does, plus the total number of die roll for me is like about 10 more than he is. So even right there, I would more than likely win. Plus also on Germany's turn, 14 here, which they go before the United States, I'm going to bring like 4 German fighters down. So that'd be 7 fighters and the 11 infantry. He definitely would not be able to take Rome on this turn 14. And then if he waited, let's say, another turn till turn 15, which would be the last turn that he would have to get Rome back or get Rome conquered for the Allies, he really has nothing that can come over. These infantry over here in southern France, they only can move 1 turn at a time. So he's going to move them 1 to Marseille on turn 14 and then 1 to Turin on turn 15. And there you go. It's not even, they can't even reach. And as you can see, he doesn't have anything else at all, even any air force that can reach. And then as far as the Incredible Falk, who's the British, again, he has nothing. He's got some units down here in southeastern Europe, which I'm going to take out on this turn anyways, but there's nothing. He's got a couple of planes, but no ground units at all. So I don't even think Rome is going to fall in the next 2 turns. And that's the only one of the 12 victory cities I have that's even remotely in danger. I mean, if you look at Russia, a couple of Russian partisans have popped up, which I got a couple of issues with that, but we'll talk about that later. But other than that, I mean, Russia's totally mine. He's not even close to that. He's not close to Berlin. And then in the Pacific, I've really got things totally under control. I mean, nothing's even remotely close to Calcutta, Singapore, Hong Kong, Manila, or Shanghai. Tokyo, nothing either. So I think if we go by the official victory conditions of the game, I'm going to win. And even if we don't, we just say, let's say we just keep going past turn 15, I actually think I'm going to win as well. I've been wrong before, so I don't want to count my chickens, but I think I'm going to be okay. As far as like the gameplay goes, since the last video, I was able to take Leningrad, and that activated Spain for me. Although Spain is now mostly under Allied control. I'm down to just Gibraltar and Seville in Spain itself. Europe has, especially Reims here in France, has gone back and forth. We've traded Reims. I don't know, me and the Incredible Falk have traded Reims back and forth at least 4 or 5 times. He goes in, takes it with a force, and then I come right back from Western Germany and come right in and take Reims. Right now he does have a stack of about 10 guys and a tank, which I'm going to take out on this turn 14. So that's kind of gone back and forth. Again, Germany's had all kinds of luck in Russia. Got Russia almost completely under control. The Incredible Falk has landed back in southeastern Europe with some British units. He's got 4 fighters here in Greece that I'm going to take out on this turn. I want to get those. He has no ground units there to protect him, so I'm going to take them out on this turn. These 3 tanks in Bulgaria, I'm going to have to leave until the following turn, but at least I'll get rid of those valuable fighters. He does have all of Africa under Allied control, and that's been that way for quite a while, actually. Italy's down to Rome, and that's it. They've been, but on the other hand, even though Italy is getting their butts kicked, the fact that I still have Italy in the game into turn 14, you know, isn't really bad. That's pretty good because they're not exactly the strongest power to begin with. And then the U.S. Agent 367 has been shuttling forces over the Atlantic here from the eastern United States over into France. So they've been kind of double teaming me in France. As you can see, all of France is currently under Allied control. So they've definitely played that well, giving me all kinds of issues, causing me to spend a lot of my German resources in Germany itself to take back French territories and just to guard against an invasion into Germany itself. That's limited how much money I can spend in the east. But then on the other hand, like I said, I've got Russia pretty much completely under control. They're at this point a couple of infantry units on the ground, and that's it. They have no capital. They have no money. They can't buy any units, even if they could collect income. So for all intents and purposes, Russia's out of the game. So I guess I don't really have to spend money in the east anyways. So it's just been kind of a back and forth. Both the Incredible Falk and Agent 367, both of them played their particular countries on the European side of the board really well. Germany hasn't had just a free reign, especially, like I said, back in Western Europe here. It's kind of been gone back and forth and been a drain on the German economy as well. As far as naval units go, I hadn't had a German naval presence for quite a while. after about the third turn, I was probably out of subs and just concentrated on all ground and air units for a while. But the last couple turns, I've gotten a little bit adventurous with my Navy, and I built up a couple of carriers with 4 fighters, and that's a stack of 17 subs there. So what I was hoping for is, because like I said, Europe was going back and forth. He has all these transports here, and he was just landing units in France like crazy every turn. So even though I would take Reims back and have a presence back in France, it'd be taken back from me right away. So it was like kind of a losing battle for me, especially when you factor in the U.S. units that were coming over. So I needed to find a way to prevent him from continuing to ferry over units every turn. So that's what got me to build up these subs. And my plan worked, because for the last couple of turns, he's reacted by building all these destroyers. And as you can see, in England himself, he's only got 2 ground units left to bring over this turn. And if I was shooting this video from a couple of turns ago, you would see a ton of yellow stacks of units in France. I mean, he had like 3 territories worth of infantry, large stacks at that. A bunch of planes. He had like, I think at one point up to 20 planes, as well as like 3 tanks. So France was just flooded with Allied units, whereas you look now, he's only really got this 1 stack of infantry and a couple of tanks, and that's it, at least for the British. So my strategy has definitely worked. He's pulled back from bringing units into France and is now concentrating on countering my naval threat that I got going. So that definitely worked out for me. And even though he's got all these units here to maybe come at this Navy this turn, I got a little bit of surprise for him. What I'm going to do on Germany's turn, which is going to be before the British get to move, I'm going to pull all of these subs and these 2 carriers back to this space, 1 space back, and I'm going to drop a new naval unit, a destroyer, in this space here. So that'll be my blocker, so he won't be able to attack this Navy on his next turn. He's going to have to come destroy the destroyer, and then on the next turn be able to attack that fleet. But I'm going to purchase a bunch of fighters this turn that I'm going to put in Western Germany. So that stack of fighters and all this, I'm going to instead attack him on my next turn with all that air power backing up the naval units. So I got a little bit of surprise for the Incredible Falk when it comes to that. So let's see if I can get the jump on him first and take out the British Navy he's got there before he can come after me. So that's what I've kind of got planned for Europe, and I'll just continue to pump units now that Germany basically has Russia under control. I'll go ahead and just be spending all my money in Western Europe itself. Again, Africa's under their control, and as you can see, there's a bunch of ships in the Mediterranean, this U.S. fleet, and then a couple of British ships. They'll probably be making their way through the Suez Canal and try to get out to the Indian Ocean and then over to the Pacific. But I've got a few turns to react to that, so I'm not so concerned. If we take a look at Italy again, they're bottled up just into Rome. They got the 11 infantry and the 3 fighters, and that's it. Nothing else on the board at all for Italy. But like I said, they've mostly served their purpose. Keeping them around until turn 14 is pretty good. And like I said, I don't think Rome's going to fall, so Italy's going to end up still surviving the entire game, I think. One misstep I made was I attacked Turkey a few turns ago, and I thought that Istanbul was the capital. So I thought if I took Istanbul, all the other units would be rolled for to see if they went to me or my opponent. I didn't realize Ankara was actually the capital. So I attacked Istanbul, took that territory, had almost nothing left, but then that turned this battleship and this destroyer, I believe it is, and the units that were in Ankara all turned British. So that was a complete screw up on my part. I mean, that didn't get me anything. My original plan was, like I said, I thought if I took Istanbul, all the other stuff would maybe be rolled for, so I might get it. Plus, also, that would open like a gateway into the Mideast for me. But like I said, once I realized my mistake and that all those other units went British, that completely blocked me from going any further. And like I said, I actually gave him extra units. So, and like in Ankara, there was like an artillery, a fighter, a man. So it was like a total blunder on my part. But live and learn, I guess. Next time I'll remember that you got to go for Ankara if you want to take out Turkey. Then let's see, what do we got going on here in the Pacific? Then over in the Pacific, things have went even better for me than in Europe. I've got Japan riding high. Now, it might not look like they have a lot of units on the board, but if you look at the territory they have, the income they're generating, and what my opponents have, Japan's looking pretty good. So I had taken out Calcutta early in the game and wiped out the Far East Command. Also, since video number 2 in this game, I've completely taken over China. So both Communist and National China are totally gone. Russia, I did have a bunch of Russian territories up here, and this is going back to that whole partisan bullshit for the Russians. So I had like all of these territories that you see a Russian infantry unit in, all those were mine. I left them empty, and maybe 1 or 2 turns ago, they were repopulated with these partisans. And obviously I knew the rule is in effect. So basically the rule is if an Axis country takes a Russian territory and then vacates it, so it moves all its units out of there, then on the next turn, a Russian partisan just automatically pops up in that territory. And then if that partisan isn't taken out on that turn, it then becomes a Russian infantry on the following turn. And then as an infantry, it's able to move and attack. As the partisan, it's just able to defend and it can't move. So it's definitely a pain in the ass. Now, I knew that rule was in effect prior to vacating those territories. The problem is that I've got Russia totally gone. I've taken not just Moscow as their capital, but then I also took Karelia as their second capital, once Agent 367 moved it to Karelia. So both their capitals are gone. They don't collect any money. They can't spend any money. And I had them down to like literally like nothing. They had no units on the board. So I didn't think that that partisan rule would still be in effect because Russia's basically completely eliminated. We looked over the rules. It doesn't say one way or the other when that Russian partisan rule expires. So they put all those partisans on the board. And like I said, as you can see, there's like a bunch of them all over on the border with Russia and Manchuria and China. So now I got to go back and take out all these friggin' units. So it's quite the pain in the ass, not to mention that if you look at some of the dollar values up here, Novosibirsk is $3. Vladivostok, which I have since taken back, but still was $2 and a bunch of dollars. So I lost like $12 as Japan besides. So that really pissed me off. But like I said, I'm probably going to ask for some clarification on that rule, maybe in my Axis and Allies Facebook group. Pose that question and see if we can get an answer. Because, like I said, I totally get that rule being in effect while Russia is still active, while Russia still has a capital, while they're still generating and collecting income and able to spend income. But once, they're basically, eliminated, how does that still affect? How do partisans still pop up? That's stupid. So anyways, I digress with that little bit of a rant. So anyways, I've got to go back and take all these Russian territories up here in the Far East. And it doesn't look like I have a lot on the board. I mean, there's a lot of empty Japanese territories with all these Japanese roundels on them. But I do have 4 transports with 4 men and 4 artillery. So I'm going to land up here on this Japanese turn, take these 3 territories back, use these 3 tanks up here to take this territory back. So, and then I've got these 3 mechs and this bomber. I'm going to move up 1 into Novosibirsk and take that back. So about half of the territories I'll take back on this turn, and the rest of them I'm not really worried about. I'll mop them up in the turn after that. So I'll get all that back. And if you take a look at the board, so let's say that I do take back all of these Russian territories. They have a single guy in them, okay? So from basically the Mideast up to European Russia, all the way over to the Pacific Ocean is all Japanese. It'll be absolutely 100% Japanese with no Allied units left on the board. So not only is that a tremendous amount of income that I'm collecting from all those territories, but there's really no chance of the Allies taking any of that back. So I can just basically ignore pumping units onto the Asian mainland at all and just concentrate on the Pacific and building up another fleet or even a couple of fleets. So Japan is in great shape there. I did build this stack of 10 mechs down in Siam, and what I'm going to start doing on this next turn now is start moving them over through India. And the goal is, it's going to take a few turns, so if we play past turn 15, this won't be in effect, but if we keep going until one side is totally victorious, then these 10 mechs are going to start moving their way through India into the Mideast here and start getting, hopefully, into Africa. Now, obviously, the Incredible Hulk can respond to that. But he's only got the single factory down here that only produces 3 units per turn. And he's going to have his hands full with what I'm doing with Germany, anyways. So those 10 mechs will hopefully start making a difference and start taking back some territories and give him something else to think about down here in the Mideast and Africa. I've got all the money islands of Japan. They're all mine. So I'm getting, collecting all that big time money there. I did land in Australia. This was probably my second biggest blunder in the last few turns, besides the invasion of Turkey, was my attempted invasion of Australia here in Sydney. That was a disaster. So I was over here in Dutch New Guinea, and I had this fleet with about 12 men on transports. I had 4 planes on the 2 carriers, and then I also had 3 veteran fighters and a bomber. So I was thinking that all of that could reach. So I attacked Sydney, but I couldn't reach with the bomber and the 3 fighters and then have them have a place to land safely. So 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 turns just to get to Sydney. That I didn't have enough space left on the planes. So the 3 veteran fighters and the bomber couldn't take part in the battle. So all I had was the 4 fighters and the 10 or 12 infantry, along with some shore bombards from my cruisers and my battleships. And look at the stack of men he's got there. So the shore bombard, I had like 4 cruisers and 2 battleships, and I hit like 1 shore bombard. So that took 1 guy off automatically. And so then it was, his 2 tanks, his 2 fighters, and about 15 men against my 12 men and 4 fighters. It was, there was no way I was going to win. I should have thought farther ahead and kind of calculated the odds, but I thought it was, I don't know, maybe I was getting a little bit too cocky. So that was a complete disaster. I lost all the infantry and 2 of my fighters before I backed off the other 2. So that was a complete disaster. But the good thing is Australia, he's got no ships, and he's got everything stuck on Australia. So he has no ability right now to move out of Australia itself. So I'm just basically going to pull away from Australia, leave some ships in the South Pacific in case he does start building ships again, so I can go and attack them before they build up strong, and just like leave him stuck on his island basically and not even worry about Australia. So this Japanese fleet here, along with this guy on a transport, is going to come up to up to Guinea on this next Japanese turn, take that $1 off Australia. It also has a naval port, and that way I can move 3 spaces, which would be 1, 2, 3, maybe on my next turn, and be in a position maybe to take Hawaii on turn 16 if we go that far. And then up around Japan itself, we had a huge naval battle here, just 1 space outside of Japan itself. There was a shit ton of both U.S. and Japanese ships. Agent 367 had come over with, I mean, if I can remember correctly, it was like 2 Iowa class, I think they're Iowa class, U.S. battleships, a carrier with a couple of planes, like something like 30 destroyers, a sub, I think 4 transports. I mean, just some ridiculous amount. But I had already had a big-time Navy waiting in Japan, so I attacked him before he could do anything else, because I didn't want to leave his stuff sitting here and then he could, like, start invading, which he actually did drop off the land units that were on the transport into the Soviet Far East there. But so anyways, I attacked him. I think that was on turn 13 maybe, or no, turn 12. And I attacked him with a Yamato battleship, something like 17 destroyers, 14 subs, and I believe, 4 carriers with 6 fighters and 2 tacticals. So I actually wiped out everything he had, and I still had the Yamato battleship, and I believe like 7 destroyers left, and all 8 planes, which I flew back to Japan, because obviously they didn't have the carriers. The carriers all were sunk, so they had to fly back to Japan. So that was what was left at the end of turn 12, but then on turn 13, or maybe that was the end of turn 13, I can't remember. But anyways, at the end of the Japanese turn, they were in this sea zone, and he had built up a bunch of naval units and some planes the turn before off the west coast of the United States. So then he went up 1, 2, 3, and then attacked what I had left. And I lost everything. I lost the battleship and the 7 destroyers. But as you can see, all he's got left is a single Iowa class battleship that is damaged. So I'm going to use my planes here on this next turn to kill that before he can retreat it. So basically, if you really look at it, it was kind of a wash. We kind of took each other completely out. But I still have the upper hand. I still have this fleet down here in the South Pacific. Plus also Japan's collecting a ridiculous amount of money. So he does have a few ships off the west coast of the United States, but not much. So by the time he builds up enough force to kind of make it over, I'm going to be buying a shit ton of Japanese ships on the next couple of turns. So, and I'm making more than he is right now. And not only am I making more than he is, but I can basically devote all of my money just to the United States at this point, with Far East Command, National and Communist China, and the Soviet Union either completely out of the game or all but out of the game here. Australia battled up on Australia itself. All I got to worry about is the United States is Japan. So not only do I make more money, but all of it's going to be going against him. Whereas the United States, he not only has to worry about obviously the Japanese, but Germany is still very much alive and kicking. So he's been having to devote some of his money to the European side of the map. So that really gives me a big time economic advantage over the United States. So like I said, if we do continue to go past turn 15, my plan is in the next couple turns to bring this fleet up into the middle Pacific here area and start putting pressure on taking Hawaii. And Honolulu actually is another victory city. So that would be victory city number 13 if I took that. Also, on the next couple turns, I'm going to buy a bunch more transports, some ground units, and a shit ton of ships. So then when I'm ready to do a kind of a pincer attack, what I'm going to do is send all these units that I've built in Japan up north to threaten Alaska. Okay, well, at the same time using this fleet down here with some reinforcements to come up and threaten Hawaii. So he'll have a dual threat coming at him within a couple of turns. So that's where we sit as far as the game itself. And if you look at the board here, we're on turn 14. We've got the Axis minor powers here and the income I'm collecting for them. Bulgaria was taken from me this last turn, so nothing there, but Hungary, Romania, and Finland are still collecting money for me. And then over here is what we were putting down for the cities that had damage. Those guys love to strategic bomb my cities. As you can see, Berlin's got 20 points of damage, which is the maximum. Stettin's got 6. So I've just been putting all my units in West Germany. Haven't even been really dealing with Berlin. That's another thing that I probably should start doing more of, maybe down the road in future games. I don't really do any strategic bombing, take out their, to do points of damage on enemy factories. I should probably do more of that. Those guys do it quite often. Almost every single turn they're bombing either a factory in Germany or Italy. And as you can see, it definitely can be costly. I mean, in this case, Berlin has a major factory, but with the 20 points of damage, it can't produce anything. So I would have to pay off that. So if I wanted to put, let's say, 10 units down in Berlin, I would have to pay $20 just to get the damage down to 0 and then the cost of the 10 units. So it definitely can be a good tool to use in the game. And then if we look at the income trackers, you can see Japan is in the lead. So we've got collecting $100 for Japan. And that's about to go up another $10 on this turn. Plus I've got about $10 or $15 worth of bonuses. So Japan is just like really kind of running away with it. I mean, the U.S. and the British are both in good shape with the mid-80s for income. And then Germany's just behind with the high 70s, but Germany's going to get about $7 worth of territory here on this turn. So Germany will be back into the mid-80s. And then Anzac is down to 16, and Italy's down to just 10. So it's basically Russia's at 12 because they still actually have $12 worth of territory, even though they don't produce units, nor can they collect their income or anything like that. So that's the way things stand economically. So it's basically at this point a 3-on-3. Germany, Italy, and Japan against the United States, the United Kingdom, and Anzac. But like I said, I think I have the upper hand. We'll see. There will be one final video on this current game. Hopefully it only takes one more video. I mean, I thought maybe we'd be able to finish this turn. I think we were at turn like number 9 prior to yesterday's start. And then, like I said, we got through turn 13, but we still keep going back and forth. So again, I think I have the upper hand, but we'll see. Hopefully it only takes one more video and we can tell you the outcome and kind of recap how everything went. Take care for now, and we'll see you hopefully at the conclusion of this game. Hello everyone, Panzer J back with a new video. And I'm happy to say that we have finally completed game number 4 of Historical Board Gaming's Global War 1939. This is the map, the way it looks. The Allies surrendered. The incredible Falcon Agent 367 after an extremely valiant fight. I believe we were up to around turn 17 or so, maybe 18. We played another probably 5.5 hours yesterday, so brought it up to probably going on 24 hours, like a ridiculous amount of time. I think it was spread out over 4 days maybe. And again, probably close to about 24 hours. It was a long game, a lot of back and forth. Extremely well fought. Like I said, it went back and forth. You know, at one point you thought the Axis had the upper hand, then it looked like the Allies did. Certain territories, Reims and France, for instance, went back and forth probably around a dozen times. And there were other territories as well that were fought over and lost and then taken back, and very competitive. Even now, I would have to probably agree with my opponents that the Axis are going to win this one. We'll take a look at the board economically here in a minute so you can see where things stand there. But if we just kind of look over, we'll take a look at Europe first. Just in the last turn or so, I came back into France. Paris was retaken. Marseille. Reims up here is the territory in France that, like I said, was fought over probably a dozen times over the course of the game. So I finally ejected pretty much all of the Allies from France except for a stack of maybe a half a dozen infantry here in Normandy. There are a couple of U.S. tanks in northern Italy. But other than that, oh, and a single man is in Holland, British infantry. But other than that, the Allies have been ejected from all of France. And I got some big stacks coming. I got probably about a half a dozen infantry in Marseille. That's a dozen tanks in Paris. And then I've got 10 mechs in Berlin and probably about another 15, 18 tanks and some infantry in Western Germany. So not only have the Allies been ejected from France for the most part, but Germany's got some serious ground units to continue to take out the last couple of Allied territories in Western Europe. And they're pretty secure. If you look on the board, Britain does have some men and a bunch of mechs, and he does have this big stack of transport, so he can move those anywhere. But with everything that I've got in Germany and France, and with the money I'm making, it'd be extremely difficult, even with him landing somewhere, for me not to eject him fairly soon. And then the U.S. is down here in Spain. Once I had taken Moscow and Leningrad, Spain went pro-German, so I was able to just walk in there and take all of Spain and all those units, but I wasn't able to get back down to Spain to reinforce anything because the Allies had both Bordeaux and Marseille here in France. So it was really just whatever Spanish forces were on the board, and those were taken out in fairly short order. I still am holding on to Gibraltar for the moment, but that's empty. But there's not a lot of U.S. forces there either, and I was going to start coming down now that I've got Paris and Marseille back. I was going to start coming down into Spain and taking that. And as you can see over here, the U.S. doesn't have a lot coming. They do have a handful of transports and a couple of sea zones by the Canadian and United States coast here, but not a lot of ground units. And the reason for that is because he's had to sink all his money in the Pacific the last couple turns, which we'll look at here in a minute. So really, there's not any U.S. forces ready to come back over. So, and I would just continue to build. I would be spending all my money as Germany and Western Europe buying tanks, mechs, planes every turn. So there's really no shot for the Western Allies to get back into France and hold on to it. So there was really no danger left for me in Western Europe for the most part. As you take a look at Russia, Russia's all German. These yellow units signify the Axis minor powers, Finland, Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary. And then we've got German units. So any Russian territory that's worth even $1 is completely under German control. As you can see, I had to leave at least one unit in each territory to prevent the Russians from partisan popping up in that territory. That was a big pain in the ass this game. A couple of times I had no choice but to leave territories empty and Russians popped up, and then I had to go back and take them out. It was a real headache. But I finally cleared all them out on the European side of Russia here. So no danger from Russia's completely eliminated. No danger from Russia coming back. So the Germans are in complete control of all of European Russia, collecting all that money. So they really could focus pretty much everything in Western Europe. So the Allies really had no chance on the European side of the map. If you look, Italy's barely holding on. I had to bring down that stack of German fighters to ward off a U.S. attack from Turin. That went on. Actually, there were a couple of assaults into Rome, and I held both times. So Italy doesn't have a lot left. But as you can see, if we pan down to Africa, other than here in Cairo, he's making kind of a last stand in Cairo. But there's no ships really except for this battleship and this British destroyer. So because now the Germans have come back into France and taken the pressure off of Italy, I was going to be able to start getting some of these Italian territories back. And Italy would have never been a powerhouse, but I was going to be able to, again, take those Italian territories back. And with really no Allied ships except for these couple of here, which I could have sunk with German or Italian fighters, I would have been able to start getting Italy back into the game a little bit. Again, they wouldn't have made a huge difference, but I could have probably got them back up to around $20 or so worth of income. And maybe started transporting some Italian units over here to Africa. Like I said, as you can see, there is nothing in Central or Western Africa at all. He's got all his eggs in just the Cairo basket over here because of the combined German and Japanese force that I've got in Transjordan. So it would have been really easy, say a couple of turns from now with Italy getting some of their economy back, to start transporting Italian units into Africa, and then I would just started taking that up. So Italy could have been built up, like I said, to me about $20, $25 income, and that would have just been taking all that away from the British. So the British and the Americans were definitely in trouble on the European side of the board. As far as Cairo, that might have held. He actually probably could have attacked on his turn. I've got a stack of about 10 Japanese mechs, 5 German mechs, and 2 tanks. So he could have came with a pretty good tank force from Cairo and a bunch of infantry. But if he wasn't able to take Transjordan on his next turn, I was going to be able to back that up with some bombers and some planes and stuff, and I was going to actually go on the offensive and try to take out Cairo myself. And again, once Cairo fell, there's like nothing in Africa whatsoever. So it would have all just been like taking up a bunch of empty territories. If we take a look over here in the Pacific, you see a lot of Japanese roundels on the board. Japan really went wild. They're the strongest power, at least economically, in the game. They own, up in the Far East here, they own all the Russian territory in the Far East. And again, there's a Japanese unit in each territory that's worth any kind of monetary value. Again, because I had a guard against partisans popping up. And they did pop up when I had vacated a few of these territories a couple of turns ago. And then I had to go back and take them out. But all of Russian territory in the Far East is Japanese. Both communist and national China, completely Japanese. The Far East Command is all Japanese. They've even started making their way into the Middle East here. They've got Iran completely under Japanese control. If we pan out and take a look at the Money Islands, all of these Money Islands are all Japanese. The Philippines. He has started the Incredible Falk as the Australians started making a little bit of a comeback and took a couple of islands back. But for the most part, the South Pacific is almost all Japanese. And as we can see, Japan's even started making their way over to the U.S. We've got Wake, Midway, and the Hawaiian Islands, all Japanese. And they even landed in the western United States, on mainland western United States. So, and that was why you didn't see a lot of U.S. units on the east coast of the United States, because I came over here with a huge Japanese force, and for the last couple of turns, he's Agent 367 has had to put all his money into western United States, building up ground units there to guard San Francisco. Now, on the last turn here, I did attack. You see the stack. It's about 15 transports, some destroyers, a loaded carrier, and I landed with, I think, 22 infantry, like 7 artillery, and he actually kind of kicked my ass. He had 20 tanks and 2 men, and he still has a stack of about 10 tanks. So he only lost like 12 units, and I lost all my ground units there. So he definitely repelled that invasion. But as you can see, I mean, what is he really going to be able to do? I got a nice Air Force sitting here in the Hawaiian Islands, a couple bombers, 3 fighters, 2 veteran fighters. These transports, I was going to start moving them back to Japan, so they could have come up 1, 2 for the next turn, and then 1, 2 for the next turn. So 2 turns, they would have been back in Japan, and by then I would have obviously built, you know, about 30 infantry or so, and then started making my way back over to the United States at that point. And with the air base I've got in Hawaii, I could have, you know, left this Air Force here, and they could have joined in the attack in San Francisco and then had an air base to fly back to. That was my problem on the battle for San Francisco, is I had a bunch of men in the artillery, but they only attack at 2s and 3s. And the planes, I didn't have Hawaii yet when I attacked. So most of these planes didn't have a spot to fly back to. So I was only able to attack with 4 planes. And then he even got lucky on his AA rolls and took out 2 of those 4 planes to begin with. So I only had 2 units that really attacked with a strong die roll. And that's why I was hardly hitting at all on my attacks. And I mean, the tanks he had, the 20 tanks, they defended a 6. So he was hitting, you know, about half the time. So he kind of chewed me up pretty good there. But again, he has no Navy here. He could obviously put some Navy down, but I'd leave these planes here and these destroyers. So I'd probably be able to take out whatever Navy he puts down each turn. So he would just be confined to the United States itself, which would give me the time to, like I said, go back to Japan, pick up a bunch of infantry, maybe tanks or whatever, and come back over. So I kind of had the U.S. just bottled up on the west coast of the United States as it was. Same thing kind of down here with Australia. He has broken out a little bit. Like I said, he's taken a couple islands back from me, but I have this stack of destroyers coming down, and then I also have this Navy over here by Siam, and 2 turns ago I had built a naval base there, and I already had a major factory, so I was starting to put down a bunch of naval units there. So what I was going to do if the game continued is come over here from Siam with my Navy, and then come down here with this group of destroyers and take out the Navy that he has, the Australian Navy he's built up. Also, I was going to use some transports to take back these islands. So then basically what I was going to do is just confine him to Australia and leave a fairly strong Japanese Navy here. So even if he bought some naval units, I would just immediately move in with my next turn and wipe them out. So basically just trap him on Australia itself. I didn't really have any plans on going after mainland Australia just because I tried that earlier in the game. And again, I got my ass kicked. So I don't think I would have actually even tried, even if we would have played for, a few more hours. I don't think I would have actually tried for Australia. I would have just bottled them up and left them where they were. So that is how things look at the end. If we kind of take a look at the economic part, you can see here Japan is in the lead. They're at $115 they're collecting, and they got $15 worth of bonuses, so $130 a turn. Germany's second at $105 plus $5 bonuses, so $110. And then you got the British still at a healthy 71, and the U.S. at 61, plus each of those countries do collect bonuses as well, so it's more than just the 71 and 61. But obviously, Germany and Japan are, 30, 40 ahead of each of them. Australia is at $20, but again, they were about to be confined just to Australia, so they weren't going to be able to do anything. And Italy's down to $8, but again, I was going to start building them back up and taking back some Italian territories. So with that, Italy would have actually become a player again. So I don't really think that the Allies really had any kind of chance going forward. And that is why they, again, called it quits after a very valiant effort. As far as the game itself, how I think things went, I thought it was probably the most competitive game we've had so far. It was definitely the longest. I thought some of the things I did worked really well. As Germany, they had a lot of success going into Russia. My mistake there was leaving territories unguarded, so the partisans popped up, and that really became a pain in the ass. Just going back and having to, then liberate those territories all over again. Even if there's only a single partisan in that territory, it's still a pain. Not to mention that, just look at the board here in Russia. I mean, that's a lot of German units tied up that have to sit in those territories just so the partisans don't pop back up. So a significant portion, even after Russia is conquered, a significant portion of my German army had to sit in Russia guarding it. So that was kind of a pain. I had a lot of trouble in France. Obviously, I took France right from the start of the game. But both the Incredible Falk and Agent 367 played it really well. I got to give a lot of props to both of them. The British gave me all kinds of headaches. I mean, I had a Navy at the beginning of the game, obviously, that the British wiped out. And then I built another Navy up again later in the game around turn 12 or so, and that got wiped out as well. I mean, I really had no Navy to speak of for most of the game. So both the British and the United States had free run of the Atlantic. They were able to continue to move forces into France. Almost every turn they were reinforcing. So it was a big time back and forth. I had to spend all kinds of money on units in Berlin and Western Germany. They also bombed my factories quite a bit, so I was spending money to repair the factories before I could put even any units down there. So those guys played their strategy in Western Europe was really really good. There were several times I thought where I actually might be pushed back into Germany itself. So it was kind of touch and go for quite a few turns. Obviously, they did good with Italy. Italy's battled up to basically Rome, and that's it. Now, again, they were going to make a little bit of a comeback, but that's only because the tide has started to turn. For the most part, and for most of the game, Italy wasn't really a factor after probably around turn 5 or so. They got ejected from Africa. So, definitely give them all kinds of credit for how they played on the European side of the board. As far as in the Pacific, not that they played poorly here, but I really had Japan rolling from the start. I took Calcutta on turn 2. So the Far East Command was knocked out on the second turn. Then I concentrated on China. Russia I went into. So I really had those guys on their heels right from the start. And by concentrating on just one at a time, instead of like kind of going for everybody at once, that's what really paid off for Japan. Like I said, taking Calcutta on turn 2 and completely wiping them out and not having to worry about them, then you can tackle China, maybe communist China, the Russians, and just go down the line, because the U.S. isn't going to be in the game for probably on average, depending on what kind of die rolls they get, you're probably looking at around turn 5 or so that they're going to be in the game. So I really used all the turns I had prior to the U.S. entry to secure basically mainland Asia. And then I could just concentrate on building fleets and so forth. And Australia, I was never able to completely take them out, but most of the game I had them bottled up just to Australia. So what kind of damage could they do? And even as the U.S., he was spending a lot of his money in Europe, which obviously presented a problem for Germany, but correspondingly, without spending a whole lot, unless he absolutely had to, on naval units, that gave Japan kind of free run of the entire Pacific. So, and for most of the game, Japan was leading economically as far as the income they were generating each turn. As far as any mistakes with Japan, probably, or things, kind of lessons I learned, was it's extremely difficult, not just as the Japanese, but any country in the game that isn't connected to their opponent by land, it's extremely difficult to conquer that country. I tried invading Australia and got totally wiped out. And then again, even this last turn when I invaded San Francisco, it went better, but I still lost. And as you can see, there's still a big stack of U.S. tanks there. It's just difficult because you've got to buy, not only do you got to purchase the ground units to do the invasion with, you got to build up, the transports, which only can take 2 units at a time, 1 infantry, and then either 1 tank, mech, or artillery with it. So you got to build up a huge stack of transports, all of those ground units, to get to, and you're in both. Australia is fairly far away. You're talking 2-3 turns from Japan. Western United States, roughly 2 turns, depending on which direction you take. So you're not going to make it to either spot for 2 to 3 turns. And that's just a lot of money that you got to invest in the transports and the ground units. And then the other problem is if you don't have carriers, with you that are loaded with planes, the ground units you're landing, infantry only attack at a 2. Even paired with artillery, they only go up to a 3. Japanese tanks are weaker. They only attack at a 5. So ground units alone are not going to take either Australia or San Francisco. I mean, the problem is obviously either the Australian or the U.S. player can see you coming. I mean, it's not like you can disguise what you're doing when you sail this huge fleet in either direction. So they're going to have a couple of turns to just simply buy all ground units. So you can just, do a stack of, you see the stack of infantry in Australia. That's about 15 infantry. They're defending at 4 apiece. Or again, in the case of Agent 367, he put down 20 tanks before I could get there. And there's just no way ground units are going to be able to take out either of those. So you need the air power, the planes, the tactical bombers, and the bombers that attack at a much higher die roll than the ground units. You need those to, with your force, or you have no chance. And, down here, I only had 1 carrier, I think, and up here, I only had 1 carrier. What I should have done is probably waited 1 more turn to take San Francisco, because I had Hawaii. So then all these planes could have launched the attack. They would have went 1, 2, 3 into San Francisco. But I didn't have Hawaii when I attacked, so they couldn't land back here. And you can't just kamikaze your planes. They've got to have a place to land. You can't just launch them and attack knowing that they have no place to land. So without the air power backing up your invasion, you really have no chance with whatever ground unit you're attacking. So I think maybe for Japan, I don't think it's really necessary to take either Sydney or San Francisco. I mean, if you look at, the Pacific right now, it's devoid for the most part of any Allied presence, except for in San Francisco and Sydney. So as the Japanese, if you can take out the Far East Command, you can take out China, the Far East Russian territories, you're going to be holding on and being in control of the islands in the South Pacific, you don't need to take Sydney and San Francisco. So I think in future games as the Japanese, I'm just going to go for a strategy of taking out pretty much everything in mainland Asia, the money islands in the South Pacific, and then just have a navy to guard against the U.S. or the Australians trying to come back out. And that's it. I won't even really necessarily go for a conquest of San Francisco or Sydney. So that's kind of what I learned from the Japanese. The next game, we're going to get that started hopefully Thursday, this coming Thursday. And we've already rolled for sides. So Agent 367 is going to take on the role of the Axis. So he's going to be Germany, Japan, and Italy. And then the Incredible Falk and I are taking on the Allies. He is going to be the British, the Australians, and the Far East Command. And I'm going to be Russia, the United States, and China, both communist and national China. So we'll see how we can go. The other thing about this game is, well, this was our fourth game. In all four games, the Axis have won. So we've all had our turn at the Allies so far, and none of us have been able to produce an Allied victory. So I'm really curious to see if that trend will continue. I specifically wanted to be Russia because not only have the Allies lost all four of the games we've played, but Russia's really got their ass kicked every time. I mean, they've been completely wiped out. I mean, at least in this game, you still see the United States, Australia, and the British still standing, even if they surrendered. Russia's totally wiped out. There's nothing left. And that's happened every game. So I think it's definitely quite a bit of a challenge to try to get Russia to be an actual viable member of the alliance here. And I think that really is the key. If Germany can just concentrate just in Western Europe, and they've got their back door here in Russia secure, it makes it extremely difficult for the Allies. So the challenge is to keep Russia alive, keep them viable, and contributing to the Allied cause. So we'll see if I can make that happen. We'll be back with a new video detailing the gameplay in game number 5. So take care for now, and we'll see you again soon.